Parker and welcome to Voices from the CEPS Ideas Lab. In this episode, I spoke with Pierre-Alexandre Balland. Pierre-Alex is a French economist and chief data scientist at CEPS. He is also visiting professor of the Growth Lab at Harvard University and one of Europe's leading experts on complex economic systems, artificial intelligence, and blockchain technologies. During our interview, we discussed why the EU is lagging behind the US and China at attracting investment into startups and scale-ups, as well as what needs to be done to create a more attractive investment environment for Europe to become a global tech player. I hope you enjoy the episode. Hi, Pierre-Alex. Welcome. It's lovely to have you here.
Thanks, Tom. Glad to be here.
Well, look, I want to get into a big question, which is why is the EU lagging behind the US and China specifically when it comes to attracting investment?
Right. So what's really clear is that Europe is lagging behind in the most critical technologies, right? When it comes to AI, quantum, big data, the technologies that really matter for economic development and prosperity. The EU is not where it should be. You don't have the big techs that the US and China have. So the big question is, what's the biggest problem, right? And the first thing I want to say, it's not what you see usually on the social media memes, when you have like a rocket, a picture of a rocket next to a picture of a lid from the bottle, and like, this is European innovation, this is American innovation. It's not about long summer vacation, it's not about a lack of talent, it's not about all of that. It's literally that the money is not moving in the economy. So the money is here. We have money in Europe. Europe is bigger than the US in terms of market, Europe plus, but the money is not flowing back, so we don't have the investment that we should have in Europe compared to the US. And why is that? Essentially, because of the way our financial system is structured. So we lack the pension funds that basically can make sure that money flows back from the worker's contribution to the economy. Mm-hmm. The US has that, the UK to some extent, but in Europe, what you have is money moving from the workers directly to the fund, but like there is no multiplier effect. And that's what we lack. The reason why there is no investment in Europe is because we don't have the pension fund that can basically put back money into the economy.
And is that an easy overhaul? I mean, can you flick a switch there and make those pension funds do that? Or does that have to have a kind of more structural reformation of how the European economy works?
So that's an interesting question, and allow me to answer in two ways. There is like the short-term answer, and there is the long-term answer. The short-term answer is that there is already money in pension funds, so we have much smaller pension funds in Europe, but they exist. So to turn the switch on, what we can do is to have like lower regulation on how this money can be invested. So we're sitting on like 4 trillion of investment, and there is a great contribution today at Ideas Lab from one of our colleagues, Scott Marcus, that is basically just going to talk about that. How to turn the switch on in a very short run by allowing these funds to take a bit more risk, which is exactly what the US did 30 years ago. Mm-hmm. So there is an easy answer, and then there is a much more complex one, which is like to get more money flowing, and that will require structural reform.
Are there any other policy decisions that need to be taken in order to create better access to investment, especially for startups, scale-ups, as well as global tech leaders?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, allowing this pension fund to make this investment, which is now, it's way harder to do that in Europe than in the US, is number one. But clearly, there is also a need to integrate the capital markets, and there is also a need to match startups' scenes and funding scenes. So right now, if you see the fund that invests in French startups tend to be French, the fund that invests in German startups tend to be German. And basically, these ecosystems are very disconnected. And that's also a much bigger issue. It's something that we don't see in the US. So integrating the financial ecosystem and the startup ecosystem is a great way to move forward.
How does the fragmentation of the EU market, combined with strict regulations, especially when you compare them to the US and to China, hinder the development and importantly, scaling of AI and other technologies?
Oh, 100%. We have also today at the Ideas Lab, we have Enrico Letta coming, and he's going to be talking about this need for unity In the Draghi report, it's also very core. Mario Draghi was just saying that this fragmentation in practice are equivalent to like a 45% tariff within the EU, right? So this is really something that we need to tackle because France is too small to compete with the US. Germany is too small to compete with China. But together, the European economy has higher population and actually more capital overall than even the US. But what China has is an incredible consumer market, very large and very deep, state investments, and the US has very united R&I ecosystem, research innovation ecosystem. So we need to start integrating way more our R&I systems. Otherwise, we're just going to compete. We're completely sabotaging our chance in the global innovation race.
But then how do you create a more unified thing? You're saying it needs to happen, but then how do you do that?
Yeah. So there are different steps to make that happen. First of all, most investment right now in research innovation happen at the member state level. So you have a French AI strategy, a German AI strategy, for instance. Yeah. And that is a huge issue because then you're going to have duplication of efforts. So you're going to create like German champions, French champions, Spanish champions. And eventually what we need is a European champion. So we need this kind of Airbus moment where European countries and companies come together and integrate much more. So how you do that? First of all, R&I investment should happen much more at the European budget, at the European level, than at the national level. So first of all, right? So moving basically the level of investment is number one, because now it's like 1 to 10. For every euro at the EU level invested in research innovation, you have 10 at the member state level. That's not sustainable, right? So duplication of efforts, we cannot scale our champions. Now, a second way to think about that is also to try to break the natural barriers between ecosystems. So right now, if I'm going to talk about external talent, migration. The US, like what the US is really good at is being a magnet for talent, right?
Absolutely.
Sucking in the talent from all over the world, from China, from India, from Germany, from France, from all over the world. And one of the reasons why it's also very easy to get to the US and to move to the US, that once you land into the Silicon Valley ecosystem, you can move very quickly to the New York one, to the Boston one. In Europe, it's much more complicated because the visa policies are very much at the member state level. Yeah. And then you have so much culture that are very ecosystem specific that we need to break all of this friction that basically slow down the mobility of talent, the mobility of knowledge.
Well, even though there are challenges, Europe has strengths, right?
Europe has so much strength. Europe has so much strength. And that's something that I feel, I've been living in between the US and Europe for like 15 years now, and I feel so sad when the world equates Europe as, just lagging behind in any kind of innovation. But if you fly an Airbus, if you fly a Boeing, and if you look at the rockets that we send, we do have one of the most incredible engineering ability in the world. So, and you start to see funds and big tech companies that start to notice the huge talent pool that Europe has, the engineering capabilities, and you start to see OpenAI, setting up an office in Paris. You see 109 billion investment in French AI, 200 billion in. So it's coming because of the talent pool. So we have great universities training absolutely incredible engineers in the field that matter. The problem is to convert this talent pool into practical innovation and to retain talent. But the talent we have, this regulation ecosystem that we talk about, and that very often is seen as like hampering innovation, is also going to be critical for technologies that matter, whether it's like in robotics, in AI, to create technology that you can trust. So we do have, and we do have scale. We have like big population, a big market. We just need to break down the barriers and integrate, and then the future will be prosperous.
I want to talk a little bit about sovereignty of AI and technologies as well, because if you've got a home market like the EU that can support any particular AI technology that is launched, but then you don't want the talent to move away and you want to make sure the investment is homegrown, that kind of builds into an overall, how I would identify as sovereignty. But sovereignty has been used as a different description now when it comes to AI technologies. Discuss that concept with me, like sovereign AI and building an AI technology for Europe that's based in Europe, that is funded by Europe, and that is powered by European talent.
Yeah, so that's a great way to think about it. because in a way, what is the most critical brick in any AI model? It's data. You know, if you don't have great data, if you don't have a lot and very good data, your AI model will not perform. So it's better to have like a very bad AI model but very good data than the other way around. And Europe has data, but right now what's happening is this free data, this free content that is being used to train LLMs is just flowing back to the US, transforming the US and commercialized back to Europe.
Yeah.
So there is an immense need of sovereignty at this level where we basically kind of have the full value chain. So the reason why we don't have this chain between customers and the AI technologies is because we have missing part of the value chain. So the data we have, and another thing that we have is like chip making capabilities, but in the very upstream amount of the value chain with ASML, right? Which basically sells technologies to any kind of chip producer in the world. So if we bring back chips capabilities and also the way to use data to train European models, then we're going to have a much more integrated ecosystem. One thing that I think we should also underscore a little bit is that we should not talk about any of these great technologies or AI without talking about climate. And Europe is leading world efforts in climate change, but also has great source of carbon-free energy with nuclear energy. So especially France has like more than 80 nuclear power plants that's going to be a huge critical advantage to power the data center that we need in the AI revolution.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today, Pierre-Alex. There's so much fascinating parts to this conversation, and so I wish you all the best at Ideas Lab, and thanks for your time.
Thank you so much, Tom.
Cheers.
Wonderful
Take
to
care.
see you.
And you.